Welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm really excited to learn more about what you're here to share. Every time we have a webinar together, I get really excited because I learn something new. So welcome to tonight's webinar.
Thank you so much, Joseline. I am thrilled because this is one of the area which I'm really excited and passionate about is construction. Been involved in it for a little bit now, and it's so enjoyable looking at a home how it was before. And generally when people finish a home, aside from financial reward and everything, it's just such a good feeling to see a house as it's getting renovated and it's getting done. I also want to take the opportunity to introduce my partner here, Luke. He works with me every day. And
hi, everyone.
He actually has a lot of knowledge in this area as well. So we'll be getting a bit of his assistance on it as well, especially in terms of financing and so on. He will be going into some details. But we're thrilled to be here. Thank you, Joseline, for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And I'm excited to have both of you guys here. One of the things that I'm looking forward to tonight is I know that you yourself do a lot of flips, Farhan. So I think that you being a mortgage broker and being a person who does, if I was to estimate, I'm going to say you probably do more than 5 flips a year. Am I right?
Well, I am involved in a lot more and I help finance a lot of them. So I have a lot of people who rely on us heavily just to do flips, and I partner up with people to do flips. It just is one of the best ways, in my opinion, to stay current in real estate market on what's happening, as well as build those bridges and relationship with a lot of local people. It brings you opportunities in all the areas. Flips is just an amazing side thing which a lot of people do on top of their primary profession to make some extra money on the side.
Absolutely. And that is why I think tonight you're the perfect person to speak about this topic tonight. So I think we've had enough time. Everybody has, at least people who showed up early have had a chance to join. So we'll get started. Welcome everyone again to tonight's webinar. My name is Joseline Nicholas. I am a real estate agent. I'm also a real estate investor. Tonight I'm very excited to be hosting this webinar with Farhan Mahmood, who I've known for a few years, and he's done quite impressive flips actually, and I think he will share some examples in tonight's webinar. So I'm very excited to be doing this with you, Farhan, and Luke as well. So without further ado, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Joseline. I'm just so humbled because I get to learn so much from you every single day, amount of hard work which you put in on day-to-day basis, and going above and beyond every time for each of your client. Just to kind of give you an example, on Sunday evening, I saw Joseline fight 3-4 hours to get a lawyer to give you a status certificate. And it was just an incredible feeling to see someone on a day when she was supposed to be off, going way beyond what her normal job is, just to make sure her client is satisfied and they are willing to, they are able to get what they really need. That doesn't mean that you should call her on Sunday evening and expect Joseline to be always available. That's not what I mean. What I do mean is that there is very few people I have seen in real estate industry who are as hardworking and as dedicated as Joseline is. Going into flip, the material I'm going to be covering from you, it's really what I have built over time. There is really nothing out of ordinary. It's just simple way how I do things in my head, and I'm putting them on paper, so hopefully it makes some sense to you. And on the same time, a lot of time I hear people, oh, he bought a home for $500,000 and he sold it for $575. 3 months later, he made so much money. And as soon as I start doing some basic calculations in my head, I do realize that they actually didn't make money. More than likely, they lost money in it. So what you see a lot of time just by looking at MLS versus what the actual reality is generally much different. And my goal is to highlight some of those things, as well as go over some of the challenges and issues which people face when they're doing flip. What I have seen in my profession is people get super excited looking at these online shows on how the flips happen, but they only show the good side of it. There is a very ugly and hard side of it as well. And my goal is not only to show you the good picture, but it's to also show you where the challenges can come and hopefully prevent people from falling into it. Okay, so over time, in my mind, I have developed four different kinds of flips, how I take a look into it. There is simple flips, there is normal flips, there is a bit of complicated flips, and then a lot of time people buy a property thinking they can repair it, and unfortunately it's not repairable, and then we have to demolish and put a new home on it. That's basically the categories which I have created in my head, and when I'm talking to people, I generally educate them based on what kind of property they are at. So let's quickly go over very simple, straightforward flip. It's generally very cosmetic, simple, basic work. You go inside a home, you change floors, countertops, maybe upgrade the kitchen and washrooms, and put the house on the market. Generally, the timeline on them is 3 to 6 months. That's the time to get in and get out. Simple projects, I see a lot of them, a lot of people doing these ones, and they're very efficient, but they're very hard to find. The challenge with simple flips is every other person thinks of they can do it, and as a result, when people buy it, there's not a lot of margin left in them. But it's a great start for someone when they're looking into getting into flips, is to start with simple flips. Just to kind of share a bit of a math on it, let's imagine if your purchase price is $500,000, you have to pay land transfer tax, which is 6,475. There is legal fees of about $2,000. And generally, when you are financing flips, banks do not like to finance flip because the in and out period is so quick that we do have to go to alternative lenders, either private lenders, to finance those. And most of them do charge a lending fee in order to do them. Now, that's not true in every case. I have people who put a line of credit on their primary residence and buy it cash and do it. I have also people who have plans to keep them long term, so we arrange different kind of financing on it. But generally, with a flip, when you're looking to do a simple flip, there is generally a lending cost. So I am taking that into account. That means upfront you need about $112,000 to buy that property. Obviously, every scenario is different. This is just as an example. Now, when you go out to sell it, let's say after you do those renovations, you sell the property for $650,000. You have to pay real estate commissions. You have to pay legal fees again. There is renovation cost, and there is also carrying cost. So what you do end up as making a profit in it is about $49,300. Jocelyn, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on it?
No, I think this is quite perfect, and I think I see most of these. These are a lot of like people who are just starting, beginners. They get pretty comfortable with these, and yeah, I've done a few of these myself, so yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Luke, do you want to add some more on it?
No, I think that actually looks quite good.
And generally what we see is a lot of time, what happens is someone is living in the home, they have been in it for 20-25 years. They don't want to do any of these cosmetic work themselves, so they sell the property a bit under value. They just want to walk away from it, and generally someone steps in, do this cosmetic work and make some profit and walk away from it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but these are often like estate sale type situations.
It is a lot of time those situations, also situations where unfortunately we do get to see a lot of this is where spouses are going their separate ways. Partners are fighting with each other. And recently with landlord tenant board regulations, we see a lot of people get sick and tired of their rental property. They just want to sell it as quickly as possible and walk away from it, and the new person comes in and they flip the property.
And also too, I think when you're discussing cosmetic, you want to make sure that, you know, if this is the kind of flip you're interested in, maybe a good place to start off. When you mention cosmetic, you mean you don't want major foundational issues. You don't want to be moving walls all over the place, adding bathrooms, adding floors. This is not what this really is. Like you said at the beginning, I think the main focus is just on top level finishes, cosmetic, lipstick, make the place look more presentable, and immediately get it back on the market ready to go.
Exactly. The biggest mistake I see in these kind of flips is the fact that people get emotionally attached with it. When it's your own property, people generally want to make it very beautiful. They want to make it how they like it. But I used to have this contractor who always used to use a word, you want to make a product which people are gonna like, not what you're gonna like. And very simple example he used to say is, Honda sells Civic, not that they make a lot of money on a Civic, but it sells a lot. So you want to create something which is very much in the marketplace, do not go for something which is out of ordinary and so on. And this is where I have seen people making some critical mistakes and losing money in it. Just to share an example with you, I had a client who wanted to do a simple flip a couple of years ago. And what this girl did, she had 2 bedrooms and 2 washrooms in her own home. She bought a 3-bedroom, 1 washroom house. And she was like, no, the in-suite is absolutely critical. So she added another washroom on the 2nd floor, killing one of the bedrooms. And the house became 2-bedroom, 2 washroom. She had to take a $15,000 to $20,000 loss in it because a lot of people don't even want to look at a house which is 2-bedroom only, and they're not willing to pay those extra dollars. Just because she wanted in suite doesn't mean everybody else wants in suite. It's nice to have, but if you are in the entry level position, 3 bedrooms are a lot more desirable than having an in suite and 2 bedrooms.
That would be considered over renovating, doing more than what is needed.
Absolutely.
And I think too, when we're talking about real estate, it's easy to get very romantic, especially when you're looking for your family home. You can picture yourself there with your family. You can already see the memories being made. And, this is when the emotions get involved. I think, when you look into situations like flips, you want to separate the emotions from the project itself. The real beauty of flips is finding the value in the undervalued. These are assets that are available. Anybody can get them, but it takes that keen eye to see the value in it. But that doesn't mean there should be much emotion involved with it. So anyway, send it back to you.
Absolutely. Now, finally, sorry, go ahead, Jocelyn.
I was going to say another thing that goes in line with that is over improvement of the property, which I think is what you're talking about. But I just wanted to point that out. That people value properties in, let's say, average neighborhoods or average market, and then they want to put the fancy finishes like granite countertops or these really, really nice finishes that aren't perfect for that neighborhood. So what I usually tell my clients, I guess as a rule of thumb, and I'm saying this because, what you were saying is in line with that, is look at the comparables. If the comparables all have luxury finishes, and you can go ahead and do luxury finishes. But if the comparables have laminate flooring and a ceramic tile, like just stick to that and do not over improve the property, basically.
I have seen the other side of it. I have had people who bought a home and they just painted it and they wanted $200,000 extra. That doesn't happen either. Yes, sometimes you do get lucky in real estate, but 9 out of 10 times you're gonna get what the market price is.
Absolutely.
And generally what that lies into is that you do have to show some improvements for some next person to come in and give you that extra buck.
And I think, especially for cosmetic type flips, they work for the same reason that staging your home does when you're selling your house, right? It's, sometimes the presentation of a property is what's really going to motivate those buyers. It's really going to have them picture themselves in those homes. And that's really what the goal is of this. Think of it almost as taking staging a little bit further, making the house much more presentable. The finishes, the carpets, the painting, everything is much, much more presentable, and then you're getting out.
And one thing I'd like to ask you at this moment is something that I've seen you do in the past with cosmetic flips. Can you talk about cosmetic flips as they relate to financing? Especially I've seen you do something that's creative, which is financing plus improvement.
Yeah. So that really comes in for people who are planning to keep the property long term. So one of the things which I get asked a lot is the burst strategy, where you buy a property, you renovate it, you refinance it, rinse and repeat. But on the same time, that doesn't really work very well here. What I have seen this happening a lot more is people buy a home, they want to improve it, and then they want to either rent it out or they want to move into it themselves. So a lot of time, even young couples, when they're taking a look into the home, generally they won't buy a home because of 1 or 2 things which are bothering them. what I have seen is a lot of time it's either, oh, the house is beautiful, the location is perfect, but the washroom is super ugly. It's right from 70s. So what I tell people is there is lenders have programs such as Purchase Plus Improvement. There is also lenders who have open mortgages, which gives you flexibility of buying the home and in few months going back to another refinancing the property. But it really depends on what you want to do, and it changes with person to person, and that's why a specialist needs to come in to kind of walk you through the process. What I have seen over time with Joseline is she is unbelievable at finding simple flips. I don't know where she gets them from, but I am constantly calling her and I'm like, do you have something coming up? I have people who are looking for it, or I have a client who is looking for it, or I'm looking for one. How do you find good flips, Joseline?
The truth is, I think that it's just conversation. I speak to a lot of people on a daily basis. I'm gonna say I probably speak to maybe like 45 to 60 people a day. And it's just like filtering out to see who is looking to sell, how are they looking to sell. Sometimes people don't want to go to market. Sometimes people just want a quick sale right there and then. So it's just these conversations that I'm able to know who needs what and who has what that they need to get rid of. Yeah. And I do have a list of, like a buyer's list, so to speak. So if anybody wants to get on that list, let us know and I'll put you on a list and I'll be sending you flips as they become available.
No, I've seen that again and again, where you have brought properties which are out of market, unbelievable deals. And that's what I have seen you doing this very effectively. I think it's time to transition into the next area of flips, which I go into is more of normal flips. These are flips where you do require permits. Generally timeline is 6 to 12 months. I'm not talking about you going to a property and fully gutting it and starting all over again, but I am talking about either you're adding a basement apartment or ripping off the living room and kitchen and making it all open concept, or opening up the place, putting LVLs throughout the home to remove structural walls, something which is more complicated. And the reason I like these kind of flips is not a lot of people, most of the people look at them and they're like, this is not for us. And they walk away from it. So there is very few buyers for them. And generally the margin with them is a bit higher. But there is also a lot of shortfalls with them. And that's why you need to have someone experienced working with you to walk you through the process. But what I recommend people is to do a couple of simple flips and then slowly transition into normal flips where it's a little bit more complicated. Just to kind of give you an idea on financing, let's say again, if your purchase price is $500,000, you're still going to incur land transfer tax, lawyer fees, lending cost, mortgage cost, and then with the sale price, you're going to incur realtor's commission, legal fees, renovation cost goes higher on them. These I'd say cost somewhere between $50,000 to $150,000. These are the projects where there is significant amount of improvement compared to what somebody bought it as and where it is at that point of sale. And you can see that profit in these projects is significantly more than a simple flip. I'm gonna bring you in, Luke, just so if you can share your thought process on it, because I see you financing tons of these. What is really a good flip, normal flip, what we refer to as?
Normal flip. I think you touched base on a lot of the main points there. I think one thing we can add into is that normally these flips come with a little bit more higher end finishes as well, right?
They do.
When you're taking out a wall and creating that dining room, kitchen open concept, or kitchen living room open concept, you do want to go a little bit higher on the finishes here, because what you also have to understand is as you look for a higher sale price, you're looking for a higher end buyer. You're looking for somebody who wants something a little bit nicer, and you want to plan accordingly for what you want to sell your home for, right? I mean, does a $75,000 home have just a base model fridge in it or a base model stove? Most likely not. right? So these are the small differences I think that can be added to normal flips and should be also considered, while going through the process as well.
Jocelyn, bringing you into it, I have seen you do these quite well, actually. What's the trick of finding them, and what advice you can give to the people?
But yeah, no, my favorite part about this is when we actually bring in additional units. Say if you have this one bungalow and then you take it from a one unit property to a duplex or triplex, that's kind of my favorite space when it comes to these normal flips. In terms of where to find them, I think we have a question here, like, do we find them on MLS or wholesale? I think for me, it's basically both. Sometimes I see deals on MLS where I'm just like, this is amazing. I wonder why it hasn't sold. And then I reached out to the realtor, and it becomes a situation of like, maybe there was a situation with a tenant or something that somebody didn't like, and then it sit on the market much longer. So we have deals like that we're finding on MLS, but we also do have deals that we find through our own network. I know, Farhan, you've brought me quite a lot of things as well. So it's just like knowing people and having these regular conversations. That's how we're able to find these deals.
And Jocelyn, I think you touched on a huge part there that we should maybe talk about more is when doing a flip, one of the best ways to add value is going to be putting those additional units in, right? Especially as, we see, year over year, prices seem to be getting higher and higher, and incomes don't quite seem to be following, as inflation continues. So, providing that supplementary income to maybe a potential buyer or even investor who can, capitalize more returns from that same property. What you're doing by adding additional units is opening up to the available market to buy the property. Coming from a mortgage broker perspective, and I'm sure Farhan could say the same, having a home that you live in that has supplementary rental income from a legal unit, let's say a basement unit, this makes getting your mortgage or qualifying for your mortgage easier. Okay, you can qualify for more house or a higher purchase price if that house generates income. So there's a ton of benefits to it. But I think too, when you're looking to put a second unit in, so let's say it's you're putting a basement unit in, there is a specific type of property you want to buy. I think one of the main features is you want to make sure the property already has, let's say, a walkout basement or a separate entrance. I think, if you're looking to put a basement unit into something that doesn't already have this, obviously your costs are going to expand exponentially. These are major changes to the property, often involve some foundational changes. But I think it all makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I just want to share one of my personal experience I have had. One of the first properties which I owned it with one of my friend. He lived in one unit, I lived in another unit. And one of the biggest benefit was that our living expenses in that property was $800 a person. And it was a huge property. I know, Jocelyn, you have been in it. We had the benefit of having completely separate units for each other, and on the same time having very, very low housing cost. That's what a shift I'm seeing. There is a lot of this happening, that parents are moving in with kids, friends are moving with each other, just because the housing prices have become so high that owning a single home for one person or one couple is getting very, very difficult. And you can either complain about it all day long, which honestly is not going to get you anything, or figure out a solution which is a little bit outside of the box and get into the housing market. Then you are with everyone else. Again, some basic numbers: people who own home versus people who don't own home, the gap in their wealth is dramatic. It's six-figure most of the times. And that's one thing I feel like people have to do. Sooner they can get into a home, and again, buying an investment property, the more they know about it, the better it is for them. Does that make sense? How you feel about it, Jocelyn?
I feel great. I think that everything we're talking about is what we do and what we believe in. So it's making it such an exciting conversation, especially me speaking for myself. Another thing that I was going to add is I find that when you add a second unit, the sale price shoots up. Because if you're looking to sell that to an investor, if you have one unit, it's one rental income. But if you have two units, you have additional rental income that justifies the purchase price. It can cover all expenses and the cash flow is higher. So I find that this space of adding additional units is literally the best at this moment and in this market that we're in.
Absolutely. And I can even speak from my own personal experience on the house that I most recently purchased. I employed this exact strategy. I have tenants in my basement right now, separate entrance. It's a massive help in the supplementary income side. And, at the time when we were buying this home, we were between townhomes, but now we own a detached for this exact reason. Even if it's not a flip, this is something that you might want to consider, if you're buying a new property.
Makes sense. Let's move on to the next type of flips. And honestly speaking, this is the most exciting one. These are something called complicated flips. And, this is the kind of flip which makes me the most happy. Because they're complicated. It's like a puzzle, and resolving issues there, just at least for me, makes me super happy. And what I have seen people do is such unbelievable things over time. And that's what generally, when you go into properties like this, you go in with a mindset that it's going to take 2 to 3 years. Maybe it's going to take 5 years with some of them, and some of them may require you a year to 2 years. Generally, when it's a longer than a year, I refer it to as complicated flip. These are the properties which are very, generally nobody wants them. To kind of give you an idea, a couple of years ago, I bought a home which was damaged by fire, and nobody wanted to buy it. It sat on the market for a while, and I was able to buy a detached home for $105,000. That was in Cambridge. Now, again, the amount of work which was required was a lot, but you're able to pick up property at much lower number than at a higher number. And there is a lot of profitability in them, but also there is a lot of risks with them. I do not recommend someone who is just starting to get into real estate investment to go into these flips. They're really for someone who has been seasoned, had done this for 2-3 years at least, have gone through 2 or 3 normal flips. This is where they go into. Give you a simple example. I have a very close friend of mine. All he does every year, he buys 2 to 3 of these, and it takes him time to go through them. He buys these side split homes, and he adds an extra additional story on it. So generally, side split have 3 bedroom, 1 washroom, but by him adding another story on it, the house has 4 bedroom and 4 washroom. And he has been consistently over time generating $100,000 to $150,000 in each of them, and he keeps his crew moving from one place to another. He's created a business out of it. He generally buys them around $500,000, and he sells them close to $1 million or slightly over $1 million. But it takes effort and it takes a lot of energy to do these ones. I have seen people doing some very creative, complicated flips, such as like now the bylaws allows in Kitchener-Waterloo to put tiny homes in your backyard. So people who have deep lots and have a separate entrance going from the side, they are able to add another home. I have seen people, especially people who have a detached garage with their house, add another structure on top of their garage and create another unit. They are adding tons and tons of value. Old bungalows, putting a second story on them would be part of this equation as well. Very exciting projects. Justin, do you want to go into a bit of detail of this, what you have seen over time with these projects?
I actually have something coming up that we're going to be adding an additional, like a second story to one of the properties that we currently own. So that's going to be fun. We're going through the approval processes right now. And you're right. What I love about these is that I feel like the competition in that space is very slim because not everyone can do this. So I find that the profit margins are higher. What do you think?
They are 100%. You can make a lot of money, but fair warning, I have lost a lot of money in these, including myself. I have seen people lose a lot of money in these. So these are much more riskier side of the projects. And the house I was telling you in Cambridge, that one I bought for $105,000. City made me demolish it. And what my plan was to repair it and sell it. And then they did not give me the permit to rebuild a home on it. I had to fight with them 2 to 3 years to get through that. Again, but it depends. You learn over time what's going to work, what's not going to work. And that's where you need to rely on professionals to help you and go through them. I was too new into the game and I did something dumb and I lost money on it. And this can happen. So That's why I recommend people at least do few normal flips before you start doing something complicated. Luke, you have seen few examples of them. You have also seen financing of them, especially in day-to-day basis. What you see as the most difficult part? A lot of time people are buying a property which has mold in it or it has water damage in it, and they think they can get a standard mortgage on it. What's your experience has been?
Yeah, I think, as we increase in the complexity of the flip or the investment property, there's a few contingencies you want to have in play. You always want to make sure you have a little bit more money put aside maybe than you originally planned, but especially as it get more complicated, you want to have a larger time frame. I think you want to be able to, if worst comes to worst, you need another 6 months, you want to be able to compensate for this. And this means being able to float the interest payments, and that might mean having to float the interest payments on private mortgages. And I think, there's a stigma around private lending. And I think in a lot of ways that stigma is entirely earned, right? A lot of bad stuff happens in the private financing markets. But when you're working with the right lender who can see, your vision of what you're going to do here, they're going to see value that the banks can't do. Okay. Now, as long as your budget makes sense and you're factoring in the cost of these loans, and it still makes sense based on how you see or your real estate agent sees the end value of the property, it still makes sense to do the project and not to do the project. So I think when it comes to flips like these, as with many flips, private financing is going to be something that is commonly used because it allows us to get the job done. With less questions, less interference as well. I think when you get a flip on the go, you want to keep your focus solely on that and not have to deal with too much stuff from a lender and whatnot. So again, they come with extra costs. That's of course true, but they also come with a lot of benefits as well.
Makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to make it clear, a lot of people feel like banks used to do construction financing back in the days. Mm-hmm. They used to be very lenient on them. They are not anymore. Even alternative lenders, they give very, very difficult time to properties which are not to mark. They will compromise on people who don't have regular ways of earning income, someone who is self-employed or someone who works on cash or etc. They will work with that. But most of the lenders, they do not compromise on property, and that's why these private lenders are very, very crucial to have in this space.
And I think another reason too is oftentimes, when you come across, and Joseline, I'm sure you could speak to this as well, when a good opportunity for a flip comes around, okay, these opportunities often don't last a long time. If you see something with value, the chances are, in a competitive market, somebody eventually will find this too. And this might mean having to negotiate quick closes, being able to find the property and closing on it quickly, which it also means getting and arranging quick financing. How can I get this property under contract and close as quick as possible and begin work? So I think that's another good way of privates can add value to your project.
Absolutely, and you're right. Like some of the best deals don't stay on the market too long. So what I usually tell my clients is, before we even start looking or before you even know that you want to fix a property, just have maybe means arranged, have a pre-approval. If we are getting into these complicated flips, have a connection to a private lender such that if we find something, you're not having to look into finances because you already know what the picture looks like. So yeah, you're right about that.
Another area I want to bring in is you were talking about the stigma of private lender. I have borrowed money multiple times from private lender. All you have to make sure is that you read the contract carefully and you're using someone reliable. That's about it. Private financing, especially like 3-4 years ago, I had an opportunity to buy a home which the seller wanted to close in 2 days. None of the banks or alternative lenders are going to be able to facilitate a 2-day closing. Even though I had to borrow money at much higher rate, I was getting the property 200,000 below market price. So it was completely worth it. So people have this stigma that private lending is very expensive compared to bank financing. Yes, it's expensive, but it's not that expensive. It's still reasonable. And as long as you can rely on someone who does this on a regular basis, there is no issues. I rely heavily on Luke on it. personally, because he understands private lending a lot better than I do. And
Yeah, well, I also think too, there's an ego component to this as well, right? I know we were working with one client recently, very successful individual. We're talking, over $250,000 a year of annual income. Found a flip project that had a tremendous amount of value involved with it. But again, the reason we couldn't get bank financing wasn't because of them as a borrower. It was because of the property in its current state. So when we propose the interest rates to them, there's that ego component comes in because they go, why the heck would I ever pay, 6%? They go, it's insulting to them. But I promise you this is not the case. So we ended up passing up on that project because they didn't want to pay the interest rate. But even when they factored in the interest rate, even when they factored in the fees, the project would have been tremendously profitable. So again, it comes down really to the numbers, and again, leaving your emotions out of this. If the private financing that was proposed, or that maybe your mortgage broker provided to you, if you put that into your budget, it doesn't make sense, and the project doesn't make sense. Okay, we can't get bank financing, but also too, if your margins are that thin, it's probably not the best project to move forward with in the first place. So I think that's what I would say about private financing. Just keep it about the numbers, and really nothing else.
Look, I love that you say that, because that's also kind of how I look at it. Yes, private money is expensive, but I look at it as the cost of doing business, right? Exactly. Because if I was to do this deal and let's say make 60,000 using private money, and if I decided to not do that transaction just because I don't want to get private funding, then I'm losing 60,000. So when you look at it as a cost of financing or a cost of doing business, it just changes my perspective.
Absolutely, right. And you also have to look at the the length of the flip, right? Because interest rates, keep in mind, these are annualized figures, right? So if you're borrowing privately at 6%, but you're in and out of your project in 6 months, you've actually effectively only paid 3% on that money. So there's other factors to keep in mind, like the time of the project.
You're right, absolutely. And again, one thing I always recommend people when they approach me and they want to do flips is I want them to understand basic accounting. It's a skill which, believe it or not, most of the people do not understand at all. Is running a flip is very much running a business. There's not a lot of difference in it. It's same thing. Let's say if you were to open up a store, there is certain amount of rent. In flip, it's a mortgage. There is cost of goods sold. In flip, it's paying contractor or buying material. There is, employees. Again, you have labor in a flip which you need to pay off. So you have to look at it from that angle. And especially in the beginning, I recommend people to partner up with someone who has been doing this for a long time and rely on their expertise for 1 or 2 or 3 flips before they go on their own and start doing their own thing. As yes, when you do 2 or 3 people, the profit splits, but on the same time, the risk splits, and you get to learn from each project. I'm not ashamed to say, growing up, I had no idea about construction. I still have very little idea, but when I started off working in flips, if somebody would have told me this is plywood, they would have called drywall plywood, I would have said it's plywood. I had no idea whatsoever, but it took me time over the years to learn about it. And now every year, not between me, but between my clients and my friends and relatives and so on, we are involved in somewhere between 50 to 100 flips a year. And it's such a satisfying experience to go through it. I'm going to skip over to one of the side of flips which a lot of people dream of for doing it for themselves or doing it for making a profit, which is basically demolishing and building a new house. Generally, just getting the permits in these days can take up to a year. They require a lot more cash, very different strategy on them than going for a simple or a normal or a complicated flip. These are long-term projects, but the revenue in them, especially with the way the housing market is right now, the new homes, the profitability in them is quite a bit. Just to run some basic numbers, that's how the basic numbers look like. Look, I know you have been involved in one lately. How has been your experience?
It's been interesting, but we're about to list the property. It's in Burlington. It's about to go on the market in about 2 weeks. So our project, we found it was an estate sale in Burlington on a nice size lot. And this tags to a lot of points that I think we've made throughout this entire webinar, because I was working with a realtor who's also my builder, to keep an eye on any potential opportunity that comes in. And this is why working with a good realtor is so important. Now, when this property came on the market, within I think an hour of it going on the market, we were with the realtor with an offer, deposit check in hand, no conditions, ready to go. Okay, we were determined, and and a lot of times that's what you have to be to do a project like this. We arranged our financing. What's very exciting about construction financing is that you can actually get you can borrow money on the finished value of the home. This makes a big difference, right? We bought a home for $750,000, but we got financing on what at the time was appraised at a $1.9 million finished home. Okay. Now, of course, you can get into more detail maybe another time, but if the funds are released in construction draw portions, as the property is approved on. But you can see how it's the financing structure is a little bit different. But again, right off the gate, we planned for the permitting process to be 3 months. It was a year. Okay. And I think we really got to feel that test of emotions. Really panicking. In reality, in hindsight, looking back to it, I was wondering why we were so worried. The market was only continuing to go up, but we were in COVID, and things can be unpredictable. But right there, we didn't go in with the right mindset, especially when it comes to rezoning, when it comes to permitting. These are city officials. These are unpredictable things. Sometimes it's just somebody had a bad day and didn't look at your file, and it gets delayed. It can be as simple as that. So I think, the next time I do this, I really want to make sure that I go in with at least a year to make sure we can get the permits on board and go in with that mindset. Set your, expectations lower and then kind of beat them, I suppose. If we can come in under a year, that's just great. But besides that, yeah, we're looking to list the house in, 2 weeks from now. The market has only gone up. So, we're looking at, profit margins similar to what you have there on the screen. I think for our project, the house was $750,000. I think we're about $1.5 million in altogether, and we're going to hopefully sell around 2.2 to 2.3 million.
And just to kind of share, this project, I've been involved in one of my clients' project, just watching it through how it's happening. And he bought the lot for $250,000, and since then, he's invested about $1 million in it, and he's going to sell it for over $2 million to walk away. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of profit involved, mm-hmm. but it's also very, very, very unpredictable. Another issue which comes up very frequently, and we don't think about it when a lot of people are going into it, is carry-on warranty. So when you're building a new home, the builder you have hired, if they're not carry-on approved, you're going to have very difficult time selling that property, because the next person who's going to come in to buy it, almost all the A lenders require carry-on warranty. Without that, they do not do financing on it. So you have to look into when you're hiring a builder to build a home like this, to make sure they have carry-on warranty, or partner up with someone who has carry-on warranty. Mm-hmm. Also keep in mind that city inspections can be brutal. Unless you know what you're doing, it can be very, very challenging. I have seen situation where, inspector gets changed. The next week, a different inspector comes and he says, I don't like it, rip all of it off, do it all over again. And the following week, the first inspector comes in and they're like, no, I want you to do it the first way. I have seen a client who had to pull off drywall 4 times from his property just to satisfy 2 different inspectors. So it can be very, very unpredictable, but it is the most rewarding side of doing flips, is when you're doing flips like this. Jocelyn, I know you have been involved in few of them as well. What's your experience like?
So I will just keep my experience short because we have 7 minutes to go. But yeah, you're right. Like I think that before anybody gets into this, and you're right, for a long time this was a dream, right? When you get started in the first stage of flipping, you're doing the simple ones, you're moving on up the ladder, and this was a dream for a long time. But yeah, you're right. I think that they're the most complicated, unpredictable, definitely higher risk, and very, very rewarding at the same time. So I would recommend that before anybody gets involved in this, maybe try to do the simpler ones and build your way up, or partner with somebody who's already doing it.
Final thought I want to leave everyone with is a lot of people get into flips because they want to make quick money. And I have a wonderful news for you. There is no quick money in flips. It doesn't exist. So if your goal is to be rich very quickly and make a lot of profit, I want to be brutal with you that this is not the case with flips. Flips generally are very much like a business where, in the beginning you have to learn. So you might get in and lose money in one or two of them, or you might get in and you might not make any profit in the beginning. But it's like a new business. You have to work on it, and as you improve your trade and you develop good relationship, finding a good contract is so difficult. I wish there was good, every contractor was a good one, but that's not the case. It's such a challenging thing, but over time you get those relationships and you get into it and you start doing better and better, and the profitability starts going up. My recommendation is only get into flips if you're passionate about them. I always give an example. A few years back, I bought a restaurant, and I'm not passionate about food. Except for eating it, I can eat a lot of food, but other than that, I'm not passionate about cooking it. And I lost a lot of money into that business very quickly because I wasn't passionate about it. And that reflected when I served the food to a client, when I went in and opened the restaurant at 4 in the morning. So same thing with flips. Unless you are passionate about them and unless you want to go there, get your hands dirty, because you would have to. To give you examples, I've seen my clients, going in and putting tarp on their property at middle of the night because it starts raining. Going in and crying all the way because the contractor did not show up, and now it's gonna cost them $10,000-15,000 extra because the whole schedule is messed up. Wrong material being shipped. There is so much which goes on in these flips behind the scenes, which unfortunately the shows on TV never ever show you. And you have to have certain amount of knowledge to get into them. So that would be my 2 cents. Jocelyn, what would be your thoughts on it?
Absolutely, you're right. And I think that I would still stick to kind of what we've been talking about, that if you're getting into this, making sure that you start with something that's simple, cosmetic renovations. The simpler it is, the lower the risk. I have a quick question here that I want you to get to, so I'm just gonna cut my speaking time in half just so you can speak more. There's a question, somebody is asking, can you talk about how one can make money in this business as a side hustle, flipping as a side hustle? If you have another job, managing that and managing this as a side hustle. Could you just shed a little bit more light on that? We have 3 minutes to go, but and just before you start speaking, I'm just gonna say that there's a lot of questions that we couldn't get through. I will call each individual person who asked the question and get through those questions myself. And if I need to consult with Farhan and Luke, I will do so, but I apologize we couldn't get through the questions.
Okay, so I have at least 10 very good friends who do it. They have a full-time job and they do this on the side. This is how they generally do it. First thing in the morning, they are at their flip project. They try to visit in lunch and they try to visit in the evening. So as a side hustle, you still need to put in significant amount of hours doing it, but it can be done. And the way it's very, very rewarding is ideally if you can partner up. Maybe you don't make a $50,000 profit, but let's say you do 3 flips a year and you make $10,000 profit on each one of them. At the end of the year, it's a $30,000 extra income. which is not that easy to make. So in the beginning, again, start with simple flips, partner up with the right people. With me, I do it with some of my friends, and honestly, it's a blast going out and working with them. If nothing else, it's such a switch from my day-to-day job that we have so much fun. And most of the time we can do the work ourselves, such as installing flooring or painting the home or something like that. If it is simple enough, we're doing it ourselves, and we just joke around and have fun with it. And I at least have a lot of fun with it, doing it that way. I'll leave it with that. Luke, do you want to add something as the final thoughts?
I think you touched on pretty much everything I want to say. Yeah, like anything else, real estate and flips, it's a muscle. It's got to be exercised. You got to work on it. Like you said, maybe you don't make many money on your first one, but you'll probably find 10 to 15 things that next time you'll do differently. Maybe you'll have built that 1 or 2 relationships that you can trust more on the other one, and then they come through for you. So, in flips, the more variables you can control, the smoother the process is going to be, the faster the work will get done, the cheaper the work will get done. But yeah, I think, in the same way you mentioned it, you have fun with it at the same time, be passionate about it. That's really what real estate is. It's a passion project. And I think, you want to be able to get in there and, and see what you can do. But what's so exciting about it is that anybody can do it. No matter what you do, anybody can get into this. You're one conversation away from, talking to a good realtor, or, finding a good, strategy and following through with it. So again, is it easy? No. But is it possible? Yes, it's possible. And, we hope that the biggest problem, I think, for a lot of real estate investing, including flips, the biggest barrier to entry is information, not knowing what to do or how to do it. So I think, between Joseline, Farhan, and I hope we've kind of helped brought down those barriers, knock down a couple of those barriers, and you can see the other side and see that entry point maybe for yourself one day. If not now, maybe in a few years. So I'll leave it on that note, but it was an absolute pleasure, Joseline. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you both for being here. Honestly, I believe that these webinars are conversation starters. The reason we're having these webinars is because I find there's a lot of content on flipping and fixing in America or other markets, but there's very few that are very Canada specific, or at least Ontario specific. So I believe that these webinars are meant to bring people together, and this is basically what we're doing tonight. I apologize for all the questions that we couldn't get through. There was just so much learning happening, and I didn't want to interrupt it, so I apologize for that. I will call every single person who asked questions. There's quite a lot of interesting questions here, so I will answer those questions one-on-one. And if there's anybody who would like to connect with Farhan and Luke, please let me know, and I'll make that introduction, and you can get more questions answered or your situation looked at specifically. Another thing I wanted to mention is that this webinar was being recorded. We have a YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube, type in Joseline Nicholas, that should come up. We've been posting most of our previous webinars there, and this will be found there as well. But we will also send it to everyone who's on here on this webinar right now, so you can have a link and you can go revisit it. I know a few people who are asking questions about the content. The slides will be there as well. And if you have any question, feel free to connect with us and we'll be happy to help. Thank you very much for attending our webinar again, and we'll be in touch with you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.